You've probably heard stories of creatures that defy explanation. Things so wrong, so alien, that they make your skin crawl just imagining them. But what if I told you there was one that terrorized a small town in Illinois in the 1970s? A creature so bizarre it had 3 legs, a grayish slimy hide, and eyes that glowed pink in the darkness. This is the story of the Enfield Horror, or the Enfield Monster, not to be confused with the Enfield Poltergeist, which I will cover in another episode. There are so many good stories to come. Welcome to the Dark Folio, your creepy little coffee break. I'm May, and here we explore the strange, the eerie, and the unexplained. Stories pulled from folklore, eyewitness accounts, and the darker corners of history. Before we begin, a quick note. Everything I share is researched to the best of my ability, using available records, reports, and documented accounts. But with stories like these, especially ones that live in the space between folklore and fact, details can shift, memories can blur, and not everything can be independently verified. So take it for what it is, a well-researched telling of a mystery, not a final answer. And with that said, let's get into it. It all started on the night of April 25th, 1973, in Enfield, Illinois, a quiet, ordinary Midwestern town. The first reported encounter came from a 10-year-old boy named Greg Garrett, a neighbor of the McDaniel family. He ran home hysterical, claiming something had attacked him in his backyard. Its clawed feet had stamped on his, shredding his tennis shoes to pieces. 30 minutes later, Henry McDaniel heard strange scratching at his door. Thinking it might be a stray animal, he opened it and came face to face with something that shouldn't exist. McDaniel described it as about 4.5 feet tall, standing on 3 legs with 2 short arms tucked into its chest. Its skin was grayish, and its eyes, they were huge, bulging, glowing deep pink in the dark, as big as flashlights, he said. McDaniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed his .22 pistol and fired 4 shots. He was certain he hit it. "When I fired that first shot, I know I hit it," he said. And the thing responded with a hiss like a wildcat. But it seemed unfazed. It jumped away with an incredible speed, covering about 50 feet in just 3 bounds, disappearing into the brush near the railroad embankment. Over the next week, the town was on edge. Investigators found strange tracks in McDaniel's yard, similar to a dog's, but with 6 toe pads, unlike any known animal. The Enfield Horror was now part of the town's reality and its fear. A note worth mentioning, Greg Garrett later told researchers from Western Illinois University that his account had been a hoax, made up, he said, to tease McDaniel and have some fun with an out-of-town reporter. His retraction doesn't fully explain away what McDaniel saw, but it is a detail that this story deserves. County Sheriff Roy Posher Jr. took the sighting seriously, at first. He confirmed the strange tracks on McDaniel's property, but as armed hunters and curiosity seekers flooded Enfield, his patience wore thin. He eventually warned McDaniel he could be arrested if he didn't stop talking to the press. Renowned cryptozoologist Loren Coleman arrived, documenting the creature and its effects on the town. WWKI News Director Rick Rainbow also investigated the area and claimed he saw the monster in the shadows and reportedly captured a high-pitched, unusual sound on tape, unlike anything a local animal could readily explain. But let's come back to Loren Coleman's involvement and why it matters. Now, for a cryptid case in 1973, having Loren Coleman show up was a little like having a celebrity investigator arrive on scene. Not because he automatically proved anything, but because he was already becoming one of the most respected researchers in the field of strange creature reports. By the early 1970s, Lauren Coleman was building a reputation as a serious investigator of unusual animal and monster reports. Unlike newspaper reporters who might spend only a few hours in town, Coleman traveled to Enfield, interviewed witnesses, he examined all the physical evidence, and he investigated the recorded sounds attributed to the creature. One detail that makes his involvement interesting is that he wasn't simply reading newspaper stories from afar. He actually visited the location and later said, "I traveled to Enfield, interviewed the witnesses, heard some strange, screeching, banshee-like sounds, and walked away bewildered." Coleman wasn't saying, "I found a monster." He was saying, "I looked into this, and I still don't know what happened." That kind of statement carries weight because Coleman spent decades investigating reports of creatures ranging from Bigfoot to lake monsters and other cryptids. He eventually founded the International Cryptozoology Museum and became one of the most recognized names in cryptozoology. So really, to summarize, the Enfield Horror wasn't just a local newspaper curiosity. The case became significant enough that one of America's best-known cryptozoologists, Lauren Coleman, traveled to southern Illinois to investigate it personally. Even after interviewing witnesses and examining the evidence, Coleman left without a clear explanation. In cryptozoology, that's often more intriguing than a definitive answer. Skeptics offered other explanations. Maybe it was a large dog with severe mange. Some labeled Greg Garrett's story a childhood prank, and Garrett himself would later confirm that that's exactly what it was. The most popular and somewhat logical explanation is that an exotic pet, such as a kangaroo, had possibly escaped from a nearby zoo. Proponents of this theory suggest that the creature's third leg was actually the thick, muscular tail of a kangaroo. However, McDaniel firmly rejected this claim and never wavered. When asked about the kangaroo theory, he scoffed, "I've seen a kangaroo before, and that wasn't no kangaroo." And as always, in the case of the unexplained, of course, sociologists have studied the incident as a classic case study of collective behavior and, quote, group hysteria. That's always one of their theories. In fact, in 1978, a team from Western Illinois University, David L. Miller, Kenneth J. Midas, and Richard A. Mathers, published a paper in the Sociological Quarter titled "A Critical Examination of the Social Contagion Image of Collective Behavior, the Case of the Enfield Monster." Their conclusion? Once the first few stories circulated, public fear and suggestibility led others to report strange sights and sounds. Some theorists suggest that the Enfield Horror fits the broader pattern of cryptids, like the Mothman or the Fresno Nightcrawlers. Others point to earlier sightings nearby. Between 1941 and 1942, residents of Mount Vernon, Illinois, less than 40 miles away, reported encounters with a mysterious leaping beast they called the Mount Vernon Monster. That creature was described as more baboon-like in appearance, but it shared the same unnerving agility, capable of leaping 20 to 40 feet in a single bound. And believe me, what you'll hear next might make you sleep with one eye open. But before we continue, if you're enjoying this journey into the strange, follow the Dark Folio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Reviews help me keep these files open and bring more eerie tales to you. If you want to check out our podcast, we did talk about the Mothman and the Fresno Nightcrawlers that I just mentioned, and you can check out one of those episodes. For extra content and community discussions, check out our Facebook page. Share your own paranormal stories, or just lurk and enjoy. Either way, we'd love to have you there. The Enfield Horror, or Monster if you'd like, didn't just vanish from the news. It left a mark. For weeks, residents were afraid to walk alone. Armed groups patrolled the woods, and Enfield became ground zero for a mystery modern science still hasn't fully explained. Folklorists love the Enfield Horror because of its alien anatomy: 3 legs, glowing pink eyes, gray skin, and a speed and agility beyond ordinary animals that make it uniquely strange. Some modern researchers even propose an interdimensional theory that these beings might slip through thin spots in our reality rather than coming from another planet. There's no proof, but sightings didn't end with that first week. 2 weeks after his initial encounter on May 6th, Henry McDaniel called radio station WWKI to report seeing the creature again, this time at 3 in the morning, moving along the railroad tracks near his home. He didn't shoot at it this time. "I saw something moving out on the railroad track, and there it stood," he said. "It started on down the railroad track. It wasn't in a hurry or nothing. And then it vanished." The Enfield case was important enough that researchers Jerome Clark and Loren Coleman later wrote about it in Fate magazine. In the July 1974 edition, in an article called "Swamp Slobs Invade Illinois." That helped move the story from a local Illinois mystery into national cryptic lore. The Enfield Horror hasn't achieved the mainstream fame of the Mothman or Bigfoot, but it has appeared in a surprising number of places. There have been several cryptid podcasts that have devoted full episodes to it, including the Cryptonaut podcast on episode 4, Folkloric in a 2026 episode, and Haunted American History. The Enfield Horrors also appeared in several cryptid and paranormal documentary series over the years, particularly shows focused on American monsters and unexplained creatures. It's often featured alongside stories such as the Folk Monster, the Dover Demon, and the Flatwoods Monster, as one of America's strangest monster reports. There has never been a major Hollywood film specifically about the Enfield Horror. However, cryptid fans often compare it visually to the creature in The Creature from the Black Lagoon, the monster from The Legend of Boggy Creek, and certain depictions of the Jersey Devil. The timing is interesting because the Enfield sightings occurred only a year after The Legend of Boggy Creek became a cultural phenomenon. Some skeptics have wondered whether monster fever from that movie influenced the witness perceptions. That's speculative, but it makes for an interesting discussion point. The Enfield Horror has become something of a cult favorite among cryptid enthusiasts online. Many fans call it one of the strangest cryptids ever reported because it doesn't fit the usual categories. Even today, discussions frequently revolve around theories ranging from escaped kangaroos to misidentified animals to something genuinely unknown. One reason the Enfield Horror is such a cryptid favorite is that nobody can agree on what it was supposed to be. Bigfoot's an ape. Mothman is, well, the Mothman. But the Enfield Horror sounds like something a screenwriter dreamed up after eating cold pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning. 3 legs, pink flashlight-sized eyes, incredible leaps and bounds. Even cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, who investigated the case firsthand, walked away scratching his head. And more than 50 years later, we're still doing the same thing. Today, the Enfield Horror is a classic chapter in cryptid history. Was it a stray animal, a collective delusion, or did Henry McDaniel really encounter something that defied the laws of biology? Well, we may never know, but McDaniel, a man who stood by his account with consistency and detail from the very first night, never changed his story. He knew what he saw. So next time you're outside at night, in the quiet of a small town, and you hear scratching at your door, pay attention, because somewhere out there, the strange and unexplained is still waiting. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to like, follow, and review the Dark Folio. Stay curious, and as always, stay a little dark, and I'll see you in the next file.